Okay, Mark, now that we have unboxed Hey Little Girl,
Yeah.
what does Icehouse mean to you, mate?
Icehouse. Well, look, I didn't hear about Icehouse until 1987 when I actually moved out from England to Australia. We didn't hear much of, Great Southern Land or Hey Little Girl back in England back in the early 80s. And I was, young at that stage, 8, 10, 9 years old. But coming out here, I sort of heard those songs after the fact. So it's 87. Crazy was massive here in Australia, and so was Electric Blue, and that amazing album, Man with Colours. What a great album. So then I discovered Primitive Man after the fact, after Man of Colours, and went back and listened to those songs, which were much more synthy than the Man of Colours album. Really electronic. So for me, that was one of the first albums I really picked up on, really vibed on Australian music. Was Primitive Man. So that came out originally in 83.
Yeah, I can't believe how long ago that came out. It is so, like, I don't know, like, I guess that's like a taste-making kind of album, because it sounds almost a little later in the 80s on average in terms of its sound, if that makes any sense.
Well, I guess it wasn't just about the singles either. The whole album was amazing from start to finish, and sonically, it was one of the leading Australian bands to come out with something that was really synthesizer and based, all the way through from start to finish, all the way through the album. Some of those album tracks on there, like Trojan Blue, weren't singles, but they're great songs in their own right. And it's definitely one of the best Australian albums ever produced. So to be able to take one of the tracks off that for Hey Little Girl, which was a single in 1983, and do a new version of it and put it out there, how exciting is that? It's just fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to me as well, because you are having basically gotten to know you over the course of this project, you are an encyclopedia of music knowledge. I mean, obviously you broke through in the rave scene in Australia, really, like in the 2000s in terms of the mainstream. But, since before that, I know that you were doing radio, like community radio, all the way back in the day. And you've been following the progression of, I guess, dance music, disco, acid house, dance floor music production, electronic production, really since its heyday almost. Not heyday, but since its inception almost, I should say. And it's just interesting to me that every single track by every single artist.
I wouldn't put it that
far. But no, it's been a really good learning experience for me. And yeah, like I discovered like Primitive Man, the album, back in the early 2000s, really, when I was DJing in clubs in Brisbane, and the big thing at the time was Electro Clash.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first kind of mainstream waves of retro 80s getting incorporated back into mainstream pop music, dance music, and house music. And we were going and we were discovering like the roots of that, and discovering a lot of 80s synth rock and that sort of stuff. So I played particularly Great Southern Land on vinyl and then on digital after that for 20 years in clubs and bars. It's 120 beats per minute. It fits perfectly with house music. It's stunning production that still, lives up, to contemporary standards. And then I went back and I started looking at Icehouse, and I went on this huge Icehouse binge just before you contacted me about this track.
Yeah, right.
And I had just been listening to their whole catalogue, like just weeks before, we started planning this track. So it was interesting. I was listening to Man of Colours a lot. That's a great track.
Yeah, as I said, same for me, Man of Colours and then Primitive Man, and I did the same thing. Once I really got into those albums, I started exploring all the other ones, like the first album, the Flowers album, and then Sidewalk, and hearing Cross the Border and Dusty Pages, two other favourite songs of mine from Icehouse. There's just so much material there to explore, and it's kind of like, if we hadn't had the choice, if the choice hadn't been made for us to pick an Icehouse song and they just said carte blanche, which one would you like to do? I don't think we could have made a decision. It's just too hard because there's just so many great songs. It just happened over a phone call, and literally the next day, Iva sent us the stems, which were digital versions of the original reel-to-reel tape, where every single element of the song was sitting there by itself. And listening to all the parts, when you know the song so well in its entirety, and then you listen to all the parts, even the little wood chop bit that comes in the verse, and all of the moog that's all the way through the song. We were there together when we listened to that for the first time when we were in Melbourne, and it just put hairs on the back of my neck. I'm sure it was the same for you, because it was like, wow, this is a really privileged moment to be able to hear all these different elements, every track of 30 tracks by themselves. So that was a great experience. And then we're like, okay, well, what are we going to do with this? Do we just take the chorus and do we just write a club track underneath it and just bang it out? Or should we be a bit more faithful to the original? We did spend quite a long time trying to work out direction and what we wanted to do with it. And in the end, we decided we'd love to do a house version, but then we'd love to do a modern version of the original. And that's what the main mix is, and the extended mix is literally still at 132 BPM, but it's just modernizing it, new elements, lots of builds, lots of lovely synth drops halfway through, and so we finished that, and then we went, well, we need another mix now to do the house one. So you might want to talk about the house mix, how we came about with that one.
That one's more difficult to talk about. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was a cool moment. Just coming back to what you said.
Yeah.
We were at your studio in Melbourne, and we got the stems, which is all of the individual recordings of all the instruments, and we loaded them into your software, and we hit play, and the song it was that song, Hey Little Girl, and it was perfect. It was all perfect, and it was all there,
all ready to go. But
it was all coming from the individual sources of the instruments. So that was really fascinating, just hearing how it was all put together. When it came time to do the disco-y version, I had been playing at a little bar in Newtown in Sydney called Blue Fig Bar.
Yeah.
I had been playing there for a couple of years, and pretty much almost every Friday or every second Friday, I'm playing with my friend Lauren Nico as well, and it's just a little bar, very, very cool, super relaxed bar, but sometimes there'd be like a couple of people, sometimes there'd be like 20 or 30 people, but the music that just always sort of seemed to work was just music that sort of chugged along, had a bit of a disco element. Sydney's always been a house town, in my view. So you just need that little house beat chugging along, but a little bit of melody and recognizable tunes. So that's what I had in my head when it came to laying down the basis of that disco version. So that's what I was thinking of when we were sort of embarking on the second version. And I think for you were saying, let's slow it down a little. Yeah. Let's make it cruisy.
Yeah.
And that's when it all sort of came together.
That's what I remember. I remember you sending the basic, drums and the bass line elements, and then we built it up from there. We slowed it right down, and Iva's vocals sounded great slowed down, which doesn't always work, because the original is 132, 133 BPM. So we slowed it down to, I think it was 119 or 120 or something like that.
I think so. Yeah, 119, yeah.
And, then built it up and arranged it and just went, you know what, this is such a great version. And we really tangled whether we wanted that to be the main mix on the A side or we wanted the more faithful mix to be the B side. So in the end, we've done it as a double A side, so neither of them take precedence. But they're completely different, and I think people will vibe on the elements of each one being its own thing, you know?
Yeah, what we wanted to do was more reimagine the song.
Yeah.
And do a faithful kind of reproduction of it, but just kind of update the song. Like keep the verses and the choruses intact. So it's not just a little sample of him saying, "Hey, little girl, 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 girl," and then that's it. You know, the same bass line over and over again ad nauseum. It's more fleshing out the song and repurposing it, and just kind of, I guess, paying our respects. You know, obviously you can tell we're massive geeks about this.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, you just kind of want to pay your respects to the song and to the artist and to the fantastic mullet that he had in the Electric Blue film clip.
Yeah, fantastic, yeah. I remember seeing Icehouse live on TV. That's when they used to play concerts on TV, and I remember one was John Farnham one night and another one was Icehouse playing live in Melbourne, and this was during the Man of Colours album, because we forget how big that album was. I mean, it was everywhere. It was, you know, absolutely huge. So, and again, this was the first time I was introduced to Australian music, because as I said, this is 87. I'd only just came out here in March 87, and you know, seeing this amazing talent, and it had its own Australian flavour. You know, it was a bit more rocky than the UK. I was used to watching, you know, bands on Top of the Pops like Tears for Fears. Well, they were kind of rocky, but more like Depeche Mode and, you know, Pet Shop Boys and you know, all of those. You know, Human League. They were much more synthetic. And then you've got this sort of hybrid in Australia of synth music, electronic music, and rock and roll as well, almost pub rock. And that was new to me. So I guess you would call it synth rock. Yeah, I guess that's the best description of these tracks from Icehouse. It's synth rock.
Yeah, that's the term that you've been using. I think it's a really good term. It's interesting that it's kind of like it's framed as a rock band.
Yeah,
a rock band with synths. But interestingly as well, when we sort of took apart the song, it revealed to me how keyboard based it was. And I thought that was interesting as well, because I always thought about it as a rock song with synths. But then when we sort of took it all apart, there's like all these beautiful pads from the old Prophet synth, and really like sort of the chords are all happening in the synths, and then the guitars and bass and stuff are all kind of just all playing along with it. So that was interesting to me, the way that, I don't know, maybe it's just kind of like the lovely warmth of those old synths, or just the general sound of it that gives it that more organic band-like flavor. I don't know, but it was just interesting to me the way it was put together.
I mean, it was revolutionary for that time, and I think you're right. It's kind of been recorded, the original version, like sort of like dance music would be recorded, you know, later in the 80s or early 90s, where it's still song based, but it's, you know, all the drums. I mean, you strip them back to just the drums, and it's just plink plonk, you know, kind of thing. And then when you have all the elements together, it really is written like electronic music. So that would have been pretty new for that time in 82, 83, especially in Australia, which was so heavily rock based with Midnight Oil and AC/DC, etc. at the time. So yeah. Look, it's been a privilege to work on this, and there it is. Hey Little Girl, the 12-inch is out now, and you can get that. It's on Long Distance Recordings, which is our label, and you can get that on the Long Distance Recordings store. And there it is, lovely purple pinkish vinyl, which matches the artwork. Nice heavyweight pressing, 160 grams. For a 12-inch, 45, it's at 45, it sounds great, and four versions of the track on the 12-inch, so make sure you grab it before it sells out. The website is store.longdistancerecordings.com.au, and there you go. Icehouse, Hey Little Girl, Antipodeans versus Icehouse. Good chat, Danny.
That was great, man. I'm glad we got that off our chest, because I've been wanting to have the debrief, like, since we started. That was good.
Yeah, well, we've worked on it for quite a while, especially through the lockdown period. And, you know, as I said before in our last video, it took sort of 6 months to get the vinyl pressed up and the lacquers back from the UK because they'd run out of metal for the stampers. So now that we've actually got it in our hands, and we can kind of look back and look at the process and look at where it came from literally that phone call all the way through to the vinyl now. So great experience, and of course there'll be more from Antipodeans after Hey Little Girl as well. We won't talk about that on this video, but yeah, stay tuned to the Antipodeans page, which you can find on Facebook or Instagram. On Facebook it is Facebook.com/We Are The Antipodeans, and you can also go to Instagram.com/We Are The Antipodeans or The Antipodeans. I can't remember. You'll have to have a check for that one, search for that one. It's definitely up there, so please follow us, like, subscribe, and enjoy the music. That's the main thing, because we love putting it together. It's so much fun, and so great working together with Danny on this as our new project, The Antipodeans.
Likewise, Mark. Cheers, mate.